Welcome to Commander Central, episode 289, and today we'll be talking about something we hinted at last week, which is taking a deck apart when it's reached its end of life. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Tyler.
Tyler, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us. How's it going today?
Doing good.
We have back-to-back listener guests here in back-to-back weeks. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell the listeners who you are and something about yourself here.
I'm Tyler. I edit for CCO Top 5 and 5 and CMD Tower Brazen builds.
Okay.
Other than that, I just build decks.
Well, in having dealt with the CCO guys, you must be.
I'm sorry,
pretty
by the
resilient.
way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you have to deal with that.
I know, I make them look good. It's all fine.
Well, that's got to be a lot of work too. It's rough. You're dealing with some rough material there.
Brando have to have a lot of filters on him to.
Yeah. Nah, I love nothing more than giving those guys hell, but they put on a really good show up there. So yeah, very cool.
I mean, they did right back, at least to Max.
Yeah.
They absolutely do.
So, Tyler, when did you start playing Magic?
I started in the end of Theros. The block itself, not the set.
Okay. And did you start with, standard and limited, or did you jump right into EDH?
Somewhat standard. It wasn't good. It was goblins. But and then Origins or something like that. A bunch of goblin cards got rotated out. I'm like, well, not doing this anymore.
That's kind of a thing you hear from a lot of people, though. Like, they'll find that standard deck that they like, and the thing they like about it rotates out, and Commander's kind of a way to keep playing that thing that they like.
Oh, well, Siege Rhino also stopped me.
Sure, yeah.
That card was a menace.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to multiple people in the past talking about, particularly that block, actually, where they loved playing, like, Mono Black Devotion, Grey Merchant was their favorite card or something, and, well, then they're just sort of playing some kind of a Mono Black Commander deck that let them play Grey Merchant again, because, once it rotated out, they couldn't do it, and that was a way to keep playing their favorite card.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. I mean, that's actually, I've heard a lot of people, actually, that's where they started. It was right around Theros, Journey into the next set. I actually talked to a guy last night who said that's when he started, too, so it's quite interesting to hear that's where you started at.
Yeah, and then you look back and it's so long ago.
Well, it's one of those things that you don't realize how far back that was until you actually look at the dates, because it just seems like you just default to a few years ago and you're like, oh no, that's like 7 or 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to look back when I started.
No kidding.
So, Tyler, do you have a favorite deck by chance, or are they just all kind of equally like something that you like to do?
I guess it had to be TMT or Ayula. One of those two.
Ayula, the Mono Green Bears commander?
Yes.
What is it about, start with that deck for example. What is it about that deck that you like so much?
Well, I built it as an artifact deck. And so
wow.
instead of playing vanilla 2/2s, you get cards like Volath Laboratory and Riptide Replicator or whatever. It's a 4 or 5 mana artifact that you can spend 4 or 5 mana to make a 2/2 vanilla. And so the deck is those, and then a bunch of mana to activate them, and then stuff like that.
Okay, that actually makes sense. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I'm actually a big fan of people who find ways to. A deck is clearly designed to do one thing, and you can find a way to make it work doing something in a way that that was not what designers intended. So that's actually a cool find.
I tried that once too, Dana, and you guys hated me off the table, so I didn't want to hear that.
You were never going to let that Narset go, are you?
No, I'm not.
And what was the other one you mentioned?
TMT. So it's Total Tribal, and then you mutate on them.
Oh, sure.
Jitsu them.
Oh, wow.
Mutate, the greatest mechanic in Magic.
That's a shared deck right now, so it's actually 2 decks.
Okay.
It's Silas and Sidar for Sans White, and then Ikra and Ludovic for Sans... No, I did that backwards. The first one is Sans Red, and then this one is Sans White. So I can play total as either in those 2 decks.
So, and how do you break that up then? You just decide before the pod, and you pull out the appropriate cards, so you have a deck box that can hold 130 cards or something.
It's one of those boxes that can hold 2 decks.
Okay.
And then, yeah, it's like a 20 card or so swap. But the main gist is you got turtles, you mutate them, and then you can repeat all of that by ninjutsu them back.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And another thing that was not probably intended, that you found a way to build a deck that works. That's cool. Very cool.
I'm gonna assume once they had mutate, they're like, yeah, this is made for turtles. Definitely made for turtles.
There we go. You just need some teenagers, and you're all good to go.
Unset.
Well, have you gotten any interesting games in with either of those decks or any decks really lately?
No. I was on vacation and then I went back and just got swamped with work.
I that's how my week's been this week. I actually missed EDH night, and I didn't even get to play and stream this week because of work, so I feel your pain. How about you guys? Anything fun from Chris or Max this week?
I did not play, but I have sleeved up my brand new deck. I have a new deck ready to go.
Your zombie deck?
My zombie deck, yes, it's ready to go.
Oh, nice. When's it going to get its first game in, do you know?
I might try to find one this weekend over virtual EDH, otherwise maybe next week in the shop.
Is it the new zombie commander, or?
No, it's partners. It's Tormod the Desecrated and Kamal from Commander Legends.
Oh, right.
So
That's cool.
a little bit of Reanimator, and then just having an overrun in your command zone is going to help, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, Golgari Zombies. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
So Max, tell me, how did that price tag feel on that Gravecrawler?
It hurt so bad. Like, I already knew what I was walking into when I was trying to find a copy of the card, but still, it should not be that expensive.
It
Yeah,
should
no,
not
that's
at all.
That price is nuts on there. Yeah. But I mean, it's a great card. Don't get me wrong.
On the plus side, I think I've sold like 8 of them in the shop in the past week. It's quite amusing.
I mean, I needed a Wand of Orcus too, which the shop didn't have, so our good friend Ben just talked me into buying the Precon, which it comes in, so, that's fun.
Yeah, there's actually been a couple of lists that we pulled where we started pulling it and we stopped immediately, contacted the person that were pulling it, because like one that we pulled, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, and it was all like 75% of it were all cards that came in the one of the commander decks for Midnight Hunt. And, like, we're looking up the cards like, well, that's a Midnight Hunt, like commander stuff. We just contacted him like, you're better off just buying this and then buying the rest of the cards that you need on top of that. And the guy's like, okay, let's do it. And that's how we approached it.
And mine was the reverse. I need one card out of it all, but I'll still buy the entire deck.
Whatever it takes to get that Wand of Orcus, I guess.
I mean, you walk away with a Lightning Greaves, a Soul Ring, an Arcane Signet, so there's a little bit of value in there over time, but yeah, it was literally flip through the deck, find the wand, and put the deck back in the box and threw it in my closet.
Oh, no.
I actually need to do the same thing for Gorix or whatever, the black turtle in the Precon.
Yeah.
Which is a super cool card, by the way.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
The cool thing that Wizards did do with that kind of stuff is that some of those cards you can get out of collector's packs and stuff like that, so you can get alert versions, so you don't have to necessarily hope that someone bought it and traded it into a store or something like that, or a store cracked it, because they might have a couple of the other singles.
Yeah, that definitely makes getting the singles that come in those pre-con decks way easier to get for sure.
Yeah.
And then you got Lindell or whatever, the set exclusive card.
Yes.
Those are super
Mono White,
weird.
Isn't she? I
Yeah.
think Lindell or whatever. Yeah, that card seems really good.
She's the Curse commander, so she's Grixis.
Oh, Grixis. Okay. Which one am I thinking of? I don't even remember now. I know I looked at it and I'm like, this is Bramaz, just not as good.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking of, Chris. Adelaine Resplendent Cathar, who's a really good card, probably a better Bramaz most of the time.
I don't know. That could definitely be an argument we should have one day.
Sure, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
So you said you had some games you wanted to talk about that you weren't necessarily playing in, Chris.
Yes. So I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 new players to EDH that have come into the shop. They are all Pokemon players.
Okay.
And this is something that we have discussed on the show before, discussing power level and how to approach new players. And I actually watched them playing with like precons. One guy had his own built deck, not very good decks, like they're running like murders and stuff like that in their decks. And someone sat down in a pod with them and did what was it? That artifact that turns everything into artifacts or whatever.
Oh, like Mycosynth Lattice?
Yep, and then tutored up Blasphemous Act, or not Blasphemous Act, but Vandal Blast to destroy everything. And they were just like, everyone was actually upset about it, like very upset about it. You're playing that kind of powerful of a deck. So I just wanted to bring that up, to listeners out there. If you are playing with the new players, you kind of got to play a little bit down to earth, down to their level and bring them into the game a little bit better. Like one guy seemed really turned off, and I told him, like, well, if you sit down with that person again, you come over and grab me. I'm like, I got a deck for you that you can play, and you'll be on equal power level, if not higher, and just teach them a lesson back type of thing.
Was that at the shop this week on Tuesday?
No, it would have been the week before. It was later at night on, I think it was like a Friday night or something like that. And, they were all just newer players, but someone else was in there to play with them. And I was just like, oh, this is going to turn out bad. Because they're like, well, I don't know if I want to play anymore. I'm like, if you want to play, I'll come play with you guys. I have a perfect starter deck that I'll play. I got spiders. I'm like, they don't get very big, and they are what they are. They just block flyers.
Honestly, I will gladly help with that, Chris, too. If they're looking to play with somebody who's not going to beat them up, let me know if there's some night they're going to be in. I can see if I can make that work to do the same.
Yeah, I'll let them know, because, they came back again last night. They were playing after Pokemon when they got done playing that, and they asked if I wanted to stay, and it's like midnight, and I'm like, no, not really. So I took off, but they were all seem like they still want to play. It's just they need to find people who are within their reasonable, hey, I want to sling some cool spells like murder and stuff like that, which I'm still trying to talk them out of pulling out of their deck and put in better ones. But
yeah, Mycosynth Lattice Vandal Blast is a pretty rough thing to do with people who are established players, unless everyone knows you're playing that kind of game, let alone somebody who has no clue what's happening.
Yeah, well, that person's also playing like Possibility Storm in their deck and stuff like that, and I'm just like, you're just like ruining the game for them. Like, once they're experienced, let them, have this kind of fun. But no, not right now.
That's a rough way to start for sure. Yes,
I'm an experienced player, and I don't like playing against Possibility Storm. Okay, let's make that very clear.
See, I like Possibility Storm if it's the first game of the night. Something to just kind of warm up, have a little bit of fun, but later on, it's just like,
it's too much thinking. You made my brain hurt. Well, if you out there in listener land would like to reach out to us and tell us about any crazy things you've seen like that, or any good games you've played, how'd you go about doing that, Chris?
Well, you can reach us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube by searching CMDR Central, and you can also find us online at cmdrcentral.com.
You can also head over to patreon.com and check out our reward tiers, such as guesting on our show or just joining our community to play virtual EDH with us. And this week we want to say hello and welcome to Louise Miraz. Thank you for supporting us, and hope you enjoy the community.
Thank you very much to all our Patreon supporters, and for everyone who supports us any way you can, even if it's just by listening to the show. It means a lot, and we really appreciate it. And to show that appreciation, we have a few more things we're going to be giving away in the month of October. We're going to take a little bit of pause from giving away the playmats and things from Andrew Nolan. We have a couple more, but we'll do that in November and December. Right now in October, listener Craig DeBevick has given us a couple things to give away here. We have 6 different playmats we're going to give away on Twitter. The GP Richmond Sun Cleanser playmat, a Nahiri the Harbinger playmat, Noxious Gear Hulk, a Thorncaster Sliver, an Unstable Very Cryptic Command, and a Worthy Challenger Amonkhet playmat. So 6 different ones we will give away to 6 random Twitter listeners who like and retweet us by the end of October, and I've already scheduled that tweet to go out, so I can't forget it. And patron supporters will have a chance to win a Commander Collection Green, also given to us by Craig. There's a Bane of Progress in there, a Command Tower, a Freyalise Llanowar's Fury, an Omnath Locus of Mana, a Seedborn Muse, a Soul Ring, a Sylvan Library, and a Worldly Tutor. That is a really good collection of cards. So thank you very much, listener and past guest Craig DeBevick. We appreciate that. So yeah, 6 playmats for people on Twitter and a Commander Collection Green for some lucky patron supporter who is supporting Commander Central by the end of the month. So thanks a lot, Craig, and thanks to everyone. Main topic here was something I was thinking about last week when we were talking about changing your commander, and then Chris just mentioned it in the middle of the show before I had even said that I was debating doing this for a deck topic, which is what you do when you've decided to take your commander deck apart, or at least why you make that decision, the things that lead you to deciding like this deck is just done. Because at least for me, it isn't always the same. So I will start us out here talking about one of mine to kind of give you an example of what we're talking about. I had a Kenrith the Returned King Exalted deck, and actually I'm going to separate, I'm going to talk about 3 decks here technically, because Kenrith was built, in this case, I had only Exalted creatures. So when one creature attacks, it gets +1/+1 because for each exalted trigger. So if you have like 5 creatures exalted, then it's going to get, +5/+5 or something. 5 color exalted, so I was able to run basically every exalted creature in that deck. I like the mechanic a lot. I know I've talked about it in the show in the past. I figured Kenrith was a way for me to be able to run every exalted creature. The problem the deck had was Kenrith is good, and it just turned into a Kenrith deck. It could have been, just me running overruns or anything. It just like the whole deck was built around playing Kenrith and attacking with Kenrith, because not only is he a useful creature in general, he's a 5/5. It was just better to just build the whole deck around him. And that's the same problem I've had with every iteration of that deck. I had tried it in the past. Originally, I built it with Rafiq, who has Exalted. He's kind of the most obvious option. I mean, Rafiq has a reputation for making an entire deck revolve around him. So then it was the same thing there. It wasn't an Exalted deck, it was a Rafiq deck. And I tried it with Saskia as well, figuring it's kind of a Voltron-esque deck. If I'm killing one person, I might as well kill a second. But again, the entire deck then revolved around Saskia. So it was a Saskia deck, not an Exalted deck. So that's why all 3 versions of that deck are things I've wound up taking apart, because it wound up not playing the way I wanted it to play, which is having the ability to use a bunch of different exalted creatures based on whatever is most useful in the moment. It's like, right now this thing is the best to attack with and give it a bunch of buffs. Maybe next turn this other thing will be better to attack with. And like, that's what I was visualizing. And every time I've tried to build the deck, it's wound up in a situation where the commander just takes everything over. So that's the reason every single time I've disabled that deck and taken it apart.
So here's a question for you, Dana.
Yeah.
The Prismatic Piper, can you choose 5 colors for that?
I don't know, but
I'm trying to look up the rules.
It's a color.
Dang it. Because if you could do that, then I'd just be like, I'd choose that because that's the most basic vanilla 5-color commander you could choose.
Well, so that kind of brings up, though, the what I am debating doing with that, Chris, which is if I give it a try again, and I've been kind of tinkering with this on Architect, is I would maybe do Eskia God of the Tree, Esika God of the Tree, the 5-color god, but she's only a 1/4 as she has Vigilance, but she's just a mana dork, essentially. And the flip side, if I cast it as a Prismatic Bridge, that's not even a creature. So like by default, I think I would force myself to not build the deck around the commander then, because the commander isn't particularly good to attack with, and half the time I'll probably wind up casting it just as the enchantment anyway.
Makes sense.
That's what happened with my Eska. They just, bridge all the time.
Yeah. But in your case, I'm guessing you were kind of not wanting to do that. In my case, that's what I'm kind of hoping to do, right? It's going to eliminate the one problem I've had from every previous attempt at the deck. So I haven't decided I'm going to go through with it yet. I have a couple other things I'm tinkering around with too, but that's why every time I've tried to build an Exalted deck, it just hasn't worked. And the most recent version was that Kenrith deck. Also, if I'm being honest, I put the deck together right after Kenrith came out, and very quickly he became a very popular commander, and that annoys me. And I know that's so stupid. That's a ridiculous reason to not want to play a deck, but it is one. It does bother me when the commander I'm playing is represented all over the shop at the same time I'm playing it. So yes, if I'm being honest, that also factored in there. That did bug me.
Now, Dana.
Yeah.
What about Corona the False God? Now, hear me out. You're
I
only
can't attack
attacking
with Corona.
Right. But you can attack with that one exalted person. So let's say the best creature on your board is an angel. You're going to give angels +3/+3 plus all the exalted triggers. Well, next turn you get Corona back. Let's say that angel's gone and you have a zombie. Well, now zombies get +3/+3 and all the exalted triggers. You can always tune what gets that +3/+3 to the best creature type on your board.
Max. Okay, all right. I'm liking that too. All right. Now I might have to revisit this down the road. That's cool. That's a good idea.
Team.
That's a really good idea. I like that.
I think Garth would be awesome because I just want to see someone jam a Black Lotus in the battlefield.
Right,
That's all I want to see.
Garth is pretty cool too. No, I like Corona. I'm okay. I'm going to think about that. But while I think about it, I'm going to throw this over to Tyler.
I'm wrong. I'm totally wrong. Corona has to attack.
Oh,
I can't read
no.
cards.
All right. Max, you've ruined my dreams.
I'm
At
sorry.
least you found that, Max. Otherwise, we're gonna just get blasted
Right.
again. With
The
all
last
these rules.
20 seconds, there's a bunch of people yelling at their headphones, no, that's not how Corona works. So, Tyler, you can start us out here before we go back to Max and Chris. Give us an example of a situation where you've taken a deck apart here.
I had a Chroma, the new one with
Mono White Chroma?
with Sakachima.
Okay.
It was fun. It was equipment, so you play equipment and it makes a token, or a token, and then a Chroma can buff the token.
Sure.
It was fun. I don't know, I got bored of it until I took it apart. But I had some pretty, I had Urza in there to make the equipment mana rocks.
Sure.
It I don't know, just time to put it away because I got tired of playing with it.
So what was it about it that because that is you don't see Azorius equipment decks very often. I actually have built one fairly recently myself. I'm not with those two commanders, but I've got one.
Wrath
What
Compassion.
was it? Yeah. Wrath, yeah. What was it about the deck that wound up getting boring? Was it a repetitive play pattern with it, or was casting a Chroma for the 19 mana she cost, was that frustrating? What wound up being the problem there?
I wanted to do more with it, but
Sure.
I couldn't figure out what else I wanted to do with it. Because
Okay.
instead of I don't know, it was just playing equipments to get value out of it. I had a deck similar to it, so it was just bouncing off that.
So that's the thing too sometimes, right? Even if the deck itself is different, if the play patterns on it wind up playing very similar to something else that you have, at least then for me, it feels well, why do I have these two decks to do the same thing and play the same way?
Yeah, I feel the same way with that.
So no, I get that.
But I'm making dragons in blue-white instead now.
Who's the commander of that one?
The Ord Dragon.
Oh, cool. Oh, sure. You can do that. That's cool.
I love it when people play the Dragon, but they're only playing two colors because the Dragon's never going to hit the battlefield. And everyone's all worried, oh no, Dragon deck. And you're just boom, just two colors. And they're okay, this isn't as bad.
Those decks are great too when the person doesn't know it either. When your friends know it's coming, it's, it's just a decent deck. But when you're playing against a stranger and they have no idea, and they're oh man, I'm doing real well. This guy's super mana screwed. But luckily, he keeps drawing all his white and blue dragons.
Well, it's the Ord Dragon with Karuga.
Okay,
it's Azorius, but it's allowing me to play hybrid colors and.
Okay, that makes
sense.
sense.
So you can and then cast Karuga just using blue mana, even though it's got green in the cost. And sure, that's not going to look like that's what the deck is. No one's ever going to see those two commanders, or see that commander and companion, and guess you're playing in Azorius colors.
Yeah,
that's super fun. Max, tell us about one you've taken apart here and why it's gone to the deck graveyard versus the actual in-play graveyard.
One of my first decks I ever took apart was my Tajik Blade of the Legion deck. This was from Dragon's Maze. It went through a couple iterations. First was just tokens because of the battalion trigger making Tajik +5/+5 until end of turn. That really didn't work out. Then I moved to Indestructible Tribal. So I ran a bunch of the Darksteel creatures and stuff like that. Those just cost a lot of mana. And back then, Boros wasn't as good as Boros is now. And that doesn't say a lot.
Sure.
And then it kind of just went from that to equipment, which worked out fine. But again, it was just back then there weren't as many good cards as there are now to support Boros.
Right.
So it just got it was a challenge to win with. Not that I was looking to win all the time, but there were definitely fewer times when I knew I could get a win, or you just run out of gas, there wasn't enough draw or stuff like that. So it just got boring to play, and you always kind of felt defeated no matter what after every game I played with it.
I don't remember the deck being bad, but I do remember it never necessarily generating interesting games.
Yes.
Yeah, the only way that he would win is if he convinced you to do something and then he stabbed you in the back later with it.
He's never going to let that one go either, Dana. Don't worry.
But no, so it's interesting because if you think about it, the play pattern probably isn't that much different than your Dromoka deck. They are both creature beat decks. That's what the win condition is on both. But for whatever reason, your Dromoka deck just is almost always different. It plays differently. The rhythms are different. It's a deck where every time I play against it, I feel like it's a different experience. And your Tajik deck being a creature beat deck, you would think that would be the same. It just didn't work that way.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, Magic's a funny game, and I think that's one of those things too. It doesn't matter, because I'm somebody who tinkers a ton before I even attempt to build a deck. I've got the list sitting there, and I'm moving cards in and out, and I'm play testing, goldfish hands, and then I'll make more changes and do whatever. So like by the time I even attempt to put a deck together in paper, it's probably been sitting virtually there from 3 to 6 months, if not longer sometimes, where I'm just messing around with parts. And even then, there are just situations where until you put a deck together and play half a dozen games, you just can't tell whether or not it's going to feel right or feel the way you want it to feel. I mean, you just got to get those reps in sometimes, and sometimes it just doesn't work. All right, Chris, how about one that you've taken apart here?
We're going to talk about probably the deck that I had the most success with, and that would be Earl the Miststalker. This deck, probably the biggest reason I took it apart is that it was just too powerful. It had such a high win percentage rate. It did everything that you want a deck to do, but it wasn't fun to play against. It wasn't fun to play per se, neither, because it was the same thing all the time. I had a running joke with this deck too, where I would draw more cards than the Blue Mage, so I would pick on them the entire game and just be like, "What's your problem? I have like 60 cards in my hand, and you only have 3. I don't understand what the issue is here." So I ripped this deck apart. I probably had it together maybe a year at the most, and just pulled it apart. I mean, when you can play the deck and it plays exactly the same every time you sit down at a pod, no matter who you're playing against, it just goes to show how powerful the deck is, and that you built it too consistent, where it just becomes a boring game to play. And Voltron just came to light to me that just wasn't my play style. I mean, it just, let's suit up a big fatty and just come swinging in. And in Earl's case, this big fatty has hexproof from everything and just gets bigger by slapping random junk on him. And, you're just getting incremental advantage that way. So off to the graveyard it went.
Yeah, it's a really, Euro's very, very strong as a Voltron commander. It's also tough to interact with, which gets frustrating for your opponents sometimes.
Yes, and the worst part I saw about with this deck is that towards the end of its lifespan, I stopped using Earl in general. It would just be the commander, and I would just try the cards within the deck, like start suiting up my enchantresses and stuff like that. And I still was winning games, and I'm like, okay, this is just not fun anymore. I guess we're just done with it.
Yeah, I know. I've been there. Sometimes a deck just pops off in a way that it doesn't make it particularly interesting. It feels like you want the person you're playing against to be able to stop you sometimes, or at least try to stop you, and then you can stop them from stopping you. And if you never get to the point in the game, like if the game feels like you are still goldfishing when you've actually built a deck in cardboard, that's not a lot of fun sometimes. I mean, maybe it is. It isn't for me, but
I don't think that's fun.
Yeah. So no, that would make sense.
No, I mean, like even with that deck, it came down. There was a few games that I was playing where you take out 2 people, and the third person to come up with a board wipe or some way to, destroy the commander, you lose all the enchantments. Well, I'm sitting at like 170 life, and I'm just like, okay, you keep chipping away at me, and I'm just going to rebuild and kill you at some point.
Mm-hmm. So the next one I will talk about is Teysa Orzhov Scion, and she's the first Teysa, the one that is commonly used in conjunction with Darkest Hour. So the way she works is when you sacrifice a black creature, you make a white spirit, and what people usually do is play Darkest Hour so they can kind of essentially make everything white and black. So no matter what they sacrifice, it makes a spirit. Sacrifice, including other spirits. And it's very easy to go infinite with that one card. I wasn't running Darkest Hour because that didn't seem fun to me. What the deck was built around doing was playing things like the Gravecrawler we mentioned earlier, or Reassembling Skeleton, or Endless Cockroaches, or Brood of Cockroaches, or whatever. A bunch of black creatures that had ways to bring them back into play after they were sacrificed. So I'd play all these things, sacrifice them, that would make a spirit token, be able to bring them back into play, sacrifice them again. So it was functionally a token deck, basically, in black and white. And then, for win conditions, there'd be things like Cathar's Crusade or Divine Visitation, so those spirits would turn into angels. They'll be much easier to kill somebody with. I had a few buffs in there that would work to make the creature stronger too, some Anthem kind of effects. The problem with that deck was, number one, early on, I had a few kind of Grave Pact effects in there because I'm sacrificing stuff anyway. Why not take some things out with it? But I found it was very easy to just accidentally kind of get a soft lock on the table. Hey, Teysa's out and Grave Pact's out, and I've got basically any of my black creatures in play that I can sacrifice 2 or 3 times per turn and just keep everyone else's creatures off the board. But I couldn't necessarily win very quickly either, so I could soft lock everything and hit somebody for 3 damage with spirits and pass a turn, and then when it would come back to me, or even at instant speed, when someone would play a creature, sacrifice that resummoning skeleton again, or sacrifice that brood of cockroaches again, and take out their creature and make a spirit, and come back to my turn and do it a few more times, and then hit somebody for 6 spirit damage. Like, unless I had the perfect combination of cards to soft lock them, while also making those spirits into angels, or using Catherine's Crusade to put counters on them, it wasn't a good time for anybody to sit there unable to cast creature spells, basically, knowing I couldn't kill the 3 people for another, 8 turns, dinging them all for, 1 spirit damage at a time. So I wound up taking out the edicts, hoping that would solve the problem. And I guess it did eliminate the issue with the soft lock, but it didn't change the fact that it was very tough to win games. And the road to getting to that point involved you having to watch me sacrifice that resummoning skeleton and make a spirit, and play it again and sacrifice it again to make a spirit. And it was a time-consuming deck that involved me doing a lot of little tiny actions like that might not actually get me very much closer to actually winning a game, even when I was winning it. So on 3 or 4 different levels, no matter what I did, it just made for not the best play experience for my opponents. And to the point where it bothered me. I'd be I'm going to have to take a 6-minute turn here sacrificing stuff to even attempt to be able to kill somebody next turn, assuming nobody board wipes. That's not fun for me, let alone them. And I could just never figure out how to turn that corner with it. And then Regna and Krav came out, which Max started building. And very quickly I realized that was just a better version of the same deck. At least the way I was trying to play Teysa. Regna and Krav just did that same kind of playstyle much, much better. And Max figured that out pretty quickly and still has the deck. So that was just the end of Teysa once I kind of realized that what I was doing just actually worked the way Max was doing it. And it wasn't working for me.
Didn't you retry her again? I thought you were doing her again right now.
So I tried the second Teysa, the one from Dragon's Maze, at one point in time as a Voltron commander. That basically, it was kind of fun, because number one, it was Orzhov Voltron, which isn't a thing you see very often. It was fun if I cast her and was able to suit her up and be able to swing through. And it was way less fun once somebody killed her once, and then she cost 9 mana to cast, and then I'd have to spend another 6 or 8 mana to re-equip her. That was way less enjoyable to do. So that's why that one didn't survive. And that's why I had swords on hand when I went to build my current Azorius equipment deck, because I had picked them all up for that second Teysa deck.
So Teysa 3 next?
Yeah, maybe, I guess, yeah. Except for that would have the problem of actually being quite popular, and then I wouldn't like it either. So maybe Teysa 4, if nobody likes her, I'll take a crack at that. So Tyler, do you have any other ones that you have that you've dismantled here for a particular reason?
This one, so much not completely taken apart, but switched commanders and colors on.
Okay.
So I had Kozilek, the Great Distortion, as a vehicle deck, because I can counter spells by throwing away vehicles, and that just sounds funny.
Yeah, sure.
But people don't like Kozilek.
That's true. That's the Narset problem.
And they get rid of me. Or get rid of Kozilek, and he costs 12.
That sounds like Teysa, sure.
And
yeah.
So, instead, with Meeks and Boo, when they came out, I thought it'd be funny if Boo could play mecha. So you equip all the vehicles with him with the bludgeoning ball.
Oh, sure.
So you turn the vehicles and equipment, and then just to suit Boo up so he can be this massive hamster.
That sounds awesome.
That's how that deck is. It's now Naya instead of colorless.
Colorless.
Interesting.
Minsc and Boo, I like that.
It's not full colorless. It has colors in it, but it was colorless from Kozilek too.
Nice. But no, the Kozilek thing, though, that makes sense. Sometimes the commander just generates you heat in a way that you just don't want to deal with. It's just makes the deck not fun then when no one wants to deal with Kozilek.
Yeah, that's actually, there's a person in the shop who's currently building 2 commander decks, and she's doing it as that stupid antelope guy that I absolutely despise.
Zendru?
Jeskai, yes. And a Kozilek. And I'm like, who are you talking to? What kind of websites are you looking at? Because you need to learn that people don't like these decks at all. And I told her straight up, I was like, okay, if I ever sit down and play with you and you're playing Zedru, I'm like, I don't want any complaining, nothing. I'm telling you right now, I will target you the entire game until you're gone.
They just
She's
want to
like-
give you things, Chris. They just want
That's
to give
what
you
she-
things.
love. The
That's
animal
what
of
she
love,
says.
man.
Yeah, she's like, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. You can just draw all sorts of cards and stuff. I'm like, no, I will kill you. It's just that simple.
Well, Chris, give us one that you've taken apart here then.
So this is probably one of my first commander decks.
Oh,
Actually,
I know
think
this
it might
is. I know
actually
this
be
is
my
gonna
first
be. Me too.
commander deck. And this is actually a tribal deck. Probably I should actually Google this and see. But my guess is this is probably the most popular tribe in Magic, and that is Slivers.
Gross.
I had two versions of this deck. I had Sliver Queen combo, and I had Sliver Overlord beats. The reason I took this deck apart is that it just became a nuisance to play. Like you'd sit down and you get targeted all game, but yet, you could always make a comeback with it because, the cards
Yeah.
synchronize so well together. There's so many outlets that you can do with it. So it wasn't like a hard time to deal with three opponents coming at you at once. Another big issue with the deck is that other players would complain a lot about it because of the easy power that you could get out of it. Like, because you play like 3 2/2s that all become like 5/5s because they all synchronize together, whereas they have to play, X amount of other stuff to get that same kind of power. Now, when I had this as a combo, it was too easy to win. Like, I could tutor up the combo, I could kill you on
Right.
turn 4. It was dumb, disgusting. I can't believe I did it. It was fun to have around for when people wanted to play that kind of game, but after that, I just, couldn't do it anymore. And that was the final iteration when I finally pulled it apart. I actually still have all the cards just sitting, waiting, to come back if the meta ever changes to those super fast, powerful decks and stuff like that. Another big reason I pulled this deck apart, and this is, kind of amusing, but I was a huge tightwad back then, and I didn't want to buy new lands, and I had
Sure.
all the nice, shock lands, all the fetch lands, everything else in there, and I'm just like, well, I need this one for this deck, and I need this one for this deck, and, and I need this for modern, and I'm just like, you know what, this deck's just, no, I need to take them out of this deck, and so I never actually bought them, more of them, so, and now the deck just sits and collects dust in my, I have a dresser that I put all my stuff in, not a closet, Max, but a dresser, and that's where all my stuff sits and chills.
Well, I do remember, Chris, one time when you had the deck, right as you were taking it apart, somebody brought a bunch of copies of Plague Sliver into the shop, which is the black
Yes.
sliver that
I remember that.
deals damage during its upkeep, and was like, okay, everyone, this is what you run against Chris. Put it into your deck.
I remember that because I don't remember what you guys were playing. Someone was in, I don't remember what it was. All of a sudden it came out and I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, what is that?
Yeah.
And I look at it and I'm like, this should not be in your deck. I'm like, oh no, okay, I see what you're doing here. This is amusing.
Yeah, I remember that. I mean, it was a really strong deck, and I'd be curious today. That we're talking like 7 years ago now at this point, right?
Yeah.
I'd be curious how it stands up today when things have definitely gotten a little bit stronger. Maybe it wouldn't feel so much of a nuisance, but it certainly did back then. I remember that. Like that was very much one of those commanders where you felt like if I let Chris play Sliver Queen or something, or any of the commanders, really, they're all very good. You're just going to
Yeah.
lose. Like if that commander's on the field, we're going to lose in the next turn.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's even more powerful today.
Could be.
Due to the simple fact we got more slivers in Modern Horizons. If I were to rebuild it, I would probably switch it up to the first sliver, just so I can have all the cascade triggers to just kind of speed out everything.
Sure.
So I honestly, there's all the new artifacts and enchantments that are out there that could, do stuff with the creatures entering the battlefield, and you get all these other triggers. And
Mana bases are way better, so it'd be way easier to play your pieces as well.
yeah, it could actually probably be more disgusting. And honestly, I don't think I've seen any sliver decks running around the store, so I don't know.
I haven't in a
Maybe
while.
I should pull it back out. Pull out
I
all the
feel sorry
old
for
G
you.
slivers. So
So Max, what do you have for one you've taken apart?
I used to have a Serac Dragon Claw Beast
yeah.
tribal deck.
That one
that
didn't
was a fun
last
deck
very
to
long
play
either.
against.
That did not last very long because I was right after Protean Hulk got unbanned and someone briberied it out of my deck and reused it against me like 4 times. So I'm like, you know what, this just isn't fun. And instead of taking Protean Hulk out of the deck, I just took the whole deck apart because, again, this was back before cards like Questing Beast and all these better beasts have been released.
So this wasn't for Ikoria wasn't out? Because a lot of
Nope.
mutates are beasts as well.
Yeah, no, this was way before Ikoria. This would have been probably when did Protean Hulk get unbanned? That was what, second Ravnica block? Third Ravnica block?
Protean Hulk was unbanned in April of 2017. And you took it apart not long after that. You had it built not long before that. It got unbanned, and you took it apart not long after.
Right.
2017.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
That's just a blink of the eye.
Yep.
It was just one of those things that I threw together thinking it was going to work and didn't put a lot of effort into it, and it wasn't fun to play. And so if I were to take another shot at it, I probably could do a lot better, seeing that we have way more beasts since Ikoria and Eldraine and stuff has come out.
I think it's one of those things too where there are some decks where you take that first try at it, and even though it's not working, there's something that catches your attention. Like I want to figure out how to make it work, and I think that was one too where you never even had that little flash where you're like, okay, I like this one part of it, so let me figure out how to make the rest of the deck work around it. There was not even an individual thing that really worked for you.
Right. I mean, Surrak has all those cool abilities. It has flash. Your creature spells can't be countered. Your other creatures you control have trample, so it has a bunch of cool stuff on the commander itself, but nothing that really jumps out like, hey, I want to do something around this. I want to build Temur Flash or something.
Right.
Yeah, I suppose though, once you get that bad taste in your mouth though too out of something, you don't even want to look at it anymore, so you're just done.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. I've got one last quick one here I'm going to talk about, and that was I tried a Tymaret, the Murder King deck fairly recently here. I want to say a year and a half ago or so. I didn't have a Rakdos deck at the time, so I was just looking through Rakdos commanders that weren't super popular. I'm like, what could I try to figure out to make work? And I was looking at Tymaret, and then a couple of things kind of came together simultaneously. I'm like, okay, well, Tymaret does direct damage to people, so maybe I could try that with Infect. It would be something different than what I had, so I could do direct damage with Tymaret. I could give him Infect when I did it. Doing 2 damage at a time with Tymaret, you'd have to use something like Infect or something to get there versus trying to take someone down from 40. So I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I'll run some Infect stuff. I will be able to sacrifice creatures, kind of like my Teysa deck, do Infect damage to people by giving Tymaret effect with Phyresis or Glistening Oil or whatever, and have a deck that's, solves the thing where I wanted a Rakdos deck. It will be played different than other ones. It seemed like I hit a bunch of the bases I wanted to try. None of those things worked. I couldn't deal enough Infect damage to people. Additionally, no one wants to deal with Infect for the most part. So once people realized what was going on, they just killed me. And it was very, very easy to kill me when you're playing an Infect deck where, unless you have Skithrix out or something, none of your creatures are very scary. They probably don't have flying or something to block flying attackers. It was just a situation where consistently I would get 4 or maybe even 6 poison counters on somebody, maybe even all 3 people, and then I would just die. There was just, people would kill me, then their poison counters wouldn't matter anymore, and they would finish out the game among themselves, and I would have to wait. So it was a combination of the deck not working the way I wanted to nearly quickly enough to actually be effective, while also basically goading everyone into attacking me.
Now, didn't you try a Lysolda deck years ago though too? Similar to that?
I've tried a couple different, I tried Lysolda. I've tried a couple different variants on this. And actually, when I was first, the Jury Treasures deck I have right now, when I was first trying it, I tried the similar thing. I'm like, well, maybe I can make Jury work the same way. And I found out that in the first or second game even, number one, I didn't need to use Infect. I was able to actually get Jury big enough I could just kill Jury and deal 20 damage to somebody, which made the Infect redundant. Or I'd be in a situation early on in the game where I'd have Jury up to 10 counters or something to be able to do 10 damage. I'm like, well, I could drop Glistening Oil right now onto Jury and kill this person on turn 5, but that kind of sucks too. So the Infect either became unnecessary in that deck, or it became a situation where I was knocking one person out way sooner than would have felt okay. So it just didn't work in that deck either, and I've been very happy how that deck played without the Infect on it. So, that was an iteration or a thing I've tried a couple times. My very first attempt at my current Vela deck, I tried with Infect, and I think Max did at one point in time too, tried Vela with Infect.
That is very true. I think I got a Vela from you to try Infect, and then I gave it back.
Yeah.
I don't think I've actually seen a good Infect deck yet.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen plenty of Infect, but I've seen way more Infect kills from someone just randomly throwing a Tainted Strike on something than I have a dedicated Infect deck, I would say.
Wouldn't the new guy be cool? He gives Death Touchers poison.
Yeah, that would be nice, but I think that there's only, 15, maybe 15 at the most green creatures that have Death Touch, mono green creatures?
Well, you also have Serath, who gives tapped creatures Death Touch now.
True, that's true.
Yeah, there's a few more options with things like Serath for sure. Yeah, part of the problem is the old wording before Death Touch was a keyword doesn't quite work the same way as Death Touch does as a keyword, so they couldn't even go back through and do like they did with Vigilance and errata it. So there's, the old Thicket Basilisk kind of cards don't even have Death Touch in hindsight because the mechanic is slightly different. So yeah, that kind of holds that up.
Chris, apparently there are 49 creatures that in mono green that have Death Touch.
No way.
If you think about it, that makes sense because there's usually like one of those, semi-vanilla creatures that's like just a 2/2 with Death Touch in most sets that are always a pain in the butt in draft to deal with.
Yeah, because I just Scryfalled it. I get 46, but a couple of these guys are actually creatures that don't have Death Touch on them. They have the ability to give themselves Death Touch.
Yeah.
Or to give something else Death Touch.
I got 49 for some reason. I have Death Touch, creature, commander, green. Weird.
Interesting.
Spooky.
I wonder if there's a couple uncards in my search or something.
Could be. That very well could be.
So Tyler, do you have one more here you want to talk about?
I also had an Infect deck. It was Ardric, the one that gives keywords to everyone.
Okay, sure. The Lunarch Marshal?
But it was, 2016, 2015. So Magic wasn't, White wasn't good. But the idea was you use all the infectors you can, and they usually have a different keyword ability with them, so then they start buffing each other up. But it was just at a time where, like, I can get stopped so easily.
Sure,
it was
right. 2016,
and White was not have the support it does now.
Is that the kind of thing that you think, now that White has more support, will be worth revisiting, or do you just think it's not a concept that would be fun, even if it did have more support?
It'd be interesting, because you don't see White infected. But
very true, yeah.
I don't think I want to revisit that. Especially because I built a Targatar as a White commander, and I usually like to keep one deck the same, one for each color, one deck.
Right.
So I don't think I'll leave it out for in the ethos for someone else to do.
Yeah, that's kind of how my Infect journey has been as well. I'm perfectly fine at this point. I've kind of given up on the chance to do it. So no, I get that. Matt, Chris, do you have one more you want to talk about here quickly?
Sure. So speaking of White decks, I had one. This would have been 2014-ish, right around in there, and that was Brimaz, King of Oreskos. Now, as we just, said, mono white at the time was just, blah,
sure,
blah, just nasty. It doesn't have the tools, that it has obtained as of today. You don't have your Smothering Tithe, you don't have some of the good anthems, you don't have, other good stuff that White actually gained as of now. Now, this deck was very low power, compared to the rest of the play group, so it's probably one of the biggest reasons that I moved away from it. Try to keep up with everyone else. When you guys we were all brewing decks and that stuff, power level started creeping, and White just couldn't creep with everyone else. The deck was set up to just make, tokens, and it played anthems. It was really vanilla theme, not much to it, and you don't get the value that you do get out of the other colors, like if you're playing, like a 3-color token deck or a 2-color token deck and stuff like that. So it just kind of lacked that punch as well, to just get that final damage through. And it definitely could not rebound as fast, because White doesn't have, the nice recursion compared to some of the other colors. Didn't have the card draw, none of that fun jazz. And this is definitely out of all my decks that I would probably revisit now, seeing all the tools that are out there, just to see if I can make it work. Because I love Brimaz. I think he's really powerful. And at the helm, being able to just spit out a token just by attacking seems really powerful. You can start doubling the tokens. You could start turning them into 4/4 angels. I mean, all that stuff seems really disgusting, and wouldn't mind actually revisiting it as of today.
And you got Helm of the Host, so you can have more Brimaz.
Yep. Yeah, I actually went through this and I looked, and when I ripped this deck apart, it was before Battle for Zendikar came out. Because I was like, okay, what cards was I missing at the time? Like, because I didn't have any of the good Planeswalkers, and like Gideon Ally of Zendikar came out in Battle for Zendikar, and that would have been 2015. So had to have been right around that range when I actually started pulling the deck apart.
Yeah. One of the things with mono white too is I think it's kind of gone from being frustrating to play sometimes to it's gotten just enough tools now that I think it now feels like a challenge that's kind of fun to overcome versus being annoying. Yeah,
agreed. I mean, like, there's so many new cards out there. Like, there's a couple of them. I'm trying to think what the name of the cards is. 3 mana, but you and target player each draw 2 cards. Like, in a mono white token deck, I wouldn't even bat an eye at playing that, just because I want that card draw, and I would look at the person who's probably the farthest behind and just give them, cards. Or if I wanted to finish the game off really fast, I'd look at the person who's so far ahead and just be like, here, draw 2 cards and let's start a new game so you can kill us all.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And Max, you're talking about taking your side deck apart too, is that right?
I am. It's probably on the chopping block. I have no plans to do it immediately, but it's, of all my decks, outside of this new one I just put together, it's the one I'm least enjoying.
Okay.
I originally built it to be like a clones and artifacts deck, and the more I've tinkered with it, I've cut a lot of the clone cards out, because relying on my opponent's stuff in order to play my cards isn't really my playstyle.
Sure.
Like, sure, I could clone that Thopter token that Sai made, but that's not going to get me anywhere.
Right.
And the more I tinker with it, it's just kind of becoming more artifact, combo-y based type deck, which I don't want to play either, so it'll probably hang around for the rest of the year, but come 2022, it's probably just going to get taken apart, and I'll find a different type of artifact deck to build.
Yeah, I know when I've only played against this deck once. It was when we played at your house, Max.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed like the deck, you did a lot of things on your turn, but you didn't actually get ahead. It was just like, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And I'm like, well, that's all awesome. And I just look, I'm like, you're still not actually scary right now, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit like how that Teysa deck might have played, where you did a lot of things and didn't necessarily make a lot of steps forward into actually killing anybody.
Yeah, you're just kind of like side skirting, doing a little dance move off to the side, a little bit of like moonwalking, and everyone's just like, oh, that's awesome. Okay, yay, let's go on.
It sounds like basically, end of the day, a lot of the reasons come down to their deck just winds up not being fun. The reasons might be different for all of us, but like at the end of the day, that's just what it is. Like, if the deck isn't fun to play anymore, that's a good reason to take it apart. I completely get that.
Yeah, I'm very surprised that no one brought up, like a deck that they ripped apart because something new came out that just was better. Like something cooler, and they're just like, well, I'm already in those colors, so I'm just going to rip it apart so I can do something different.
Yeah, which I don't think it's not something I've ever done for a deck, but I get that too. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's nothing I've ever done. I know I suggest a lot of decks to people. Like, someone in our store, Ben, is actually building the 3-mana green elf or whatever that you go dungeon delving whenever you cast a creature spell. And he's just going to jam like 50 creatures in there, just random vanilla crappy creatures, just to go into the dungeon repeatedly. That's all he wants to do.
That'll be fun. Yeah, no, that's people brewing weird, neat stuff like that. That's always my jam to play against for sure.
Yes.
All right. That is going to wrap up episode 289 of Commander Central. Tyler, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you on the interwebs here?
You can find me on Twitter @_tcoates, and just every other week on CCO Top 5 and 5.
Reach out to the guys at CCO and tell them what a great job Tyler does making them actually look like adult human beings. Just so
you guys know, I don't talk that much trash with CCO, so if I get blasted, I swear.
Then why in the show notes does it say this was written by
Chris, right? Talk about the trash.
No.
Well, Tyler, thanks a lot for coming on, and thanks a lot for supporting the show and supporting the community in general. We appreciate it.
And much appreciated being here.
That is the end of episode 289. I am Dana. You can find me on the Twitter birds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. Our show is edited by Rafael Garcia. You can find him on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker. And our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. We'll be back next week with episode 290. Until then, I am Dana.
I'm Max.
I'm Chris.
I'm Tyler.